Hey guys, it's Courtney and welcome to the Encouragement Card Hop. This is the first stop on the hop, so I thought it would be fitting where I recreate a card that I made in the very beginning of my card making obsession, not even a hobby, we'll call it an obsession. So I have a box here of very old cards that I made in the very beginning. And I've done this before. I kind of randomly just pick one out and try to recreate it with kind of upping my game a little bit, I should say. So I'm just going to reach in and I'm going to pull one out, and it is a very simple one. You can see that I did no shading at all. I probably at this time, I don't remember making this. It doesn't even have a sentiment, but probably at the time I didn't have alcohol markers and I kind of just colored these in solid. So we are going to recreate this and kind of step it up a notch. So I have my stamp set here, which luckily I still do have. I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my little crayon here onto a piece of Post-it note. Post-it note, that's what it's called. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of masking. So I cut 3 of my masks. I am stamping with Blackout ink by Ink on 3, and I'm stamping on a piece of Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And my goal is just to make a big pile of crayons. So I'm kind of moving my masks around as I go to where I need to put them, overlapping. There's really no rhyme or reason for it, but I am reusing the same masks. Now you want to make sure that you have enough masks, maybe even more depending on how much stamping you're going to be doing, depending on the type of masking you're doing. So because I'm using Post-it notes, they don't really hold the ink too well. So the ink may start seeping through where you're stamping over them. So you just want to be super careful of that. If you see the ink starting to kind of bleed through a little bit, you'll want to get a new mask. In my case, I didn't have to do that. I had the 3 and I kept just kind of moving those around. But had I filled up this entire panel with all of these crayons, I probably would have needed another 3 masks just because that ink would start seeping through. So once I had all of my stamping complete, I will go ahead and remove my masks, and then we're going to move on to the Copic coloring. So for most crayons, the paper or wrapper, I guess, where the color is labeled, I guess you could say, is usually lighter than the crayon itself. So I am going to start by filling that in with a lighter combination, and then the crayon or the wax part itself would be a little bit darker. I'm adding my shading on either side to keep a center highlight because these would be round objects. In this particular case, I'm not all that concerned about creating shadows where one crayon is over another. I'm just concentrating on keeping that center highlight, making this nice and simple. Now I'm not getting a whole lot of contrast here, and that's fine because in the end we're going to be adding some white gel pen details and you'll see what a difference that can make. So as always, I start off with my lightest color to get the paper saturated. This makes the blending a little bit easier. I'm going in then with my darkest color, again adding that to either side, blending that out with my 2 mid-tone colors, and then I will finish off with my highlight color right there in the center, and this will make the crayon look like it is round. So I continued doing this for all of the crayons, and I pretty much kept to a rainbow theme just like I did in that original card. I kept all of the color combinations that I used on camera here, but I'm not going to show you all of the coloring. I am just going to show you one of each color. So 1 red, 1 orange, 1 yellow, you get it. Just so that you can see the color combinations that I did use. A lot of times, especially once I move on to the yellows and the greens and blues, you'll see that I use the same colors. I picked 5 colors. I used the 4 lightest for the wrapper or the paper that's around the crayon, and the 4 darkest for the crayon part itself. So I just basically left off that highlight color and added 1 step darker for that wax part of the crayon. I think it's wax. Are crayons made out of wax? Whatever. You guys know what I mean. So like I said, I'll keep all of the coloring in here just so that you can see the color combinations that I used in case you are new to Copics or maybe just starting your collection or even have them and not sure which ones go well together. Now, normally I will use a really scary dark color to get a ton of contrast, but like I said, in this case, I wasn't too concerned about that because I just wanted to show you guys what a difference a white gel pen highlight can make. I've had a couple of comments from you guys wondering how I determine where I put my white gel pen detail and how it makes a difference. So I figured this would be a great card to kind of show that. While I'm finishing up the coloring, I just want to briefly tell you about this encouragement hop. Myself, Mary Polanco, and Jen from Scrappina Creations were all having a crafty weekend, and we were on a YouTube live video, and somebody had asked about blog hops and how they get involved and how they get invited to participate in one. So we kind of came up, I put Mary and Jen on the spot and kind of came up with an idea of creating a hop that's for everybody, whether you have a blog or a YouTube channel or whether you don't. So there was 3 ways that participants could get involved in the hop. They could either create a YouTube video, which I know many of them, this is their first video ever. So that is really cool. And they could also create a blog post, or if they didn't have either one of those, they could mail in a card where I will showcase that on a YouTube video and kind of give you a brief explanation of what they did with the card and give you a little background information about the creator. So that is actually going to be the last stop on the hop. Below in the description box will be a link to the next stop, which I believe is a blog, and so on and so forth. So once you go to that blog post, right at the bottom of that blog post, there will be a link to the next stop, which will be a video, and it will kind of take you back and forth. There's a ton of participants, so keep in mind that the hopping along will probably take more than just a day unless you have the day off or something today. But make sure that you leave a comment and leave some love for the participants. Like I said, most of them, or at least some of them, this is the first time that they're participating in anything like this, whether they did a blog or a video or whether they mailed in a card. So make sure that you leave some encouraging words for them. Also, all of the cards that are made for the hop will be donated to different organizations. We will be donating a lot to the Ronald McDonald House, and we have some going to St. Jude's, and we have a couple of other organizations that we will be donating them to. So here I am just finishing up this last color combination here. These are the purples, and like I said, once I finished up the coloring of the crayons, I colored the rest of them with those same color combinations. For the little label, I guess, that is on the packaging or the wrapper of the crayon, this would normally be where the color, I guess, would be labeled. I wanted to add a little bit of shading to that as well. So to keep with that round look, I am going to add shading to either side. So I'm going to bring out some C markers. I'm going to start with the C5 and just add a little bit on either side of that oval. Blend that out with the C3 a little bit, then the C1, leaving a little bit of white space in the center. I'm going to quickly go over that with my colorless blender just to get rid of those harsh lines to have a more seamless blend. So once all of my coloring was done here, I am going to go ahead and add those white gel pen details. And I do not have a method for this. I'm sure there probably should be one, but there's not. I typically put them in the darkest areas so that they stand out a little bit, and I just pick a spot. I go with the shape of the object, so in this case it's pretty easy, it's a straight line, but I just make sure that I'm going along with the shape. So if it's a curved shape, you want to curve your line. But you can see this really brightens everything up just by adding a few little straight lines. So once that was done, I'm going to go ahead and add my sentiment, and I'm going to pick from the Color My World from W+9, just because I felt like this was more of an encouraging sentiment to kind of go along with the theme of our hop. Bringing out my Misty here to stamp this a couple of times with the Blackout ink by Ink on 3. Because this is a brand new ink pad, it's very juicy, so I'm trying not to smush too hard with the ink pad so I don't get any globbies. That's why I knew I wanted to stamp this multiple times. I wanted to add some color to those open words, especially the word color. So I'm going to bring out a variety of Copic markers here, and you can see that the last number either is the same or closely matches the color before it and after it, and that will make sure that these colors blend well together. So I'm starting with the red towards the top and then blending a little bit down with the orange, then the yellow. You guys get it, you know the order of the rainbow. Now, some of these will blend a lot easier than others. And others you may have to kind of go back and to the previous color to get them to blend a little bit, like this green and yellow. I did have to go back to my yellow just to make sure that they blended a little bit easier. The more saturated the paper is, the better the colors will blend. However, you don't want to oversaturate the paper because then you may have some bleeding outside the lines, and you definitely don't want that. And these are teeny tiny little areas, so you want to be super careful that you don't have any bleeding. So I'm just going to finish off with the purple here and then go back to that blue just to make sure the blue and the purple blend nicely together. And for the U, this is also open, but I didn't want to color this with rainbow colors, but I'm going to add a little bit of shading with those same C markers that I used for the label portion of each of the crayons. Starting with the C5 on the top, extending that down a little bit with the C3, and then using the C1 just towards the bottom of the letters. So once all of my coloring is complete, I added a little bit of shimmer to just the crayon part of the, oh no, first I lie. I added the little smiley face from the Lawn Fawn stamp set to the labels, and I didn't bother to do any masking. If one of them is kind of covered up by another crayon, I just left that blank. Now I added some shimmer to the wax part of each of the crayons with a Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen just to add a little bit of sparkle. And to add a little bit of dimension, I used some glossy accents and went directly over the word color. And this will appear cloudy in the beginning, but it will dry completely clear. And just to add a few embellishments on either side of my sentiment, I brought out some Nuvo glitter drops, and these are the clear, and I will link them below because I can never remember the name of them. And I just added those on either side of the sentiment. And that is it. That is the card for the hop. Be sure to check out the next post that will be linked below. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.